While the men marched off to war, the women stayed behind, but they were never idle. Across towns, villages, and farms, kitchens became command posts. Women organized ration plans, cooked for entire neighborhoods, packed care packages, and sewed uniforms late into the night. A mother might spend her mornings tending crops and afternoons writing letters to her sons at the front. A wife would stand in line for hours to secure supplies, then share her haul with neighbors. A sister might volunteer at the local Red Cross, folding bandages with trembling hands while praying her brother would never need them. In every pot stirred and every letter sent, there was strength. Quiet, patient, enduring strength. These women did not bear rifles, but they bore the war in every heartbeat and every prayer. Their labor was invisible, but without it, the war effort would crumble. They didn't ask for medals. They only asked for their loved ones to come home, and even when hope grew thin, they carried on, not because they had to, but because they must. The kitchen may have smelled of soup and soap, but it was also thick with resolve, courage, and love. While history often remembers the soldiers on the front lines, there is another kind of endurance that receives far less recognition: the quiet, agonizing weight of the women left behind. These were the wives, mothers, and daughters who kept the home fires burning, while every knock at the door might bear tragic news. Their war was measured not in battles, but in empty chairs at dinner tables and sleepless nights haunted by uncertainty. Letters were their lifelines. Sometimes a blessing, sometimes a torment. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months as they scanned every envelope for familiar handwriting. In those carefully penned lines, they searched for hope, or worse, signs of despair. Many women held on to routines as a form of control. A mother would sweep the front porch every day at the same hour, as if her son might come walking up the road. A fiancé stitched together a wedding dress by candlelight, unsure if it would ever be worn. A grandmother baked a pie each Sunday for a grandson who might never come home. Every chore, every habit became a ritual, a shield against helplessness. Communities of women formed quiet support networks. They shared food, looked after each other's children, and lent ears to worries that were too heavy to carry alone. Some found comfort in prayer, others in protest. But nearly all of them found strength they never expected to possess. Not every woman received the closure of a returning embrace. Some were greeted instead by telegrams sealed in sorrow, followed by the ache of memory and the long silence that follows final goodbyes. Yet they endured. Their strength didn't make headlines or inspire songs, but it was there, unshaken and unyielding. This is the story of the women who waited. Their patience was not passivity, but power. Their stillness was not weakness, but will. In every long pause and tearful vigil, they proved that courage comes in many forms, not just in the fight, but in the wait. Across America, posters urged women to join the war effort, do the job he left behind, and they did, in droves. From assembly lines to shipyards, over 6 million American women entered the workforce during World War II. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster. She was real, and she had sisters, friends, neighbors. Some had never held a wrench before. Others had never worked outside the home. But they learned fast, riveted faster, and outperformed expectations. They built bombers, tanks, and Liberty ships. They inspected munitions and packed parachutes. Every bolt turned, every line drawn, a message to the enemy: we're not backing down. Beyond the factory walls, another silent army toiled under the open sky. With men gone to war, the burden of feeding a nation fell on women's shoulders. The Women's Land Army recruited thousands to pick fruit, plow fields, and raise livestock. Housewives became harvesters. Secretaries became shepherds. City girls learned to sew and scythe. Rural women, already hardened by years of toil, worked harder still. They not only managed crops, but raised children, wrote to husbands overseas, and rationed every last bean and barrel of flour. In both city and country, their hands never rested, only calloused, dirty, and bore the weight of sustenance. The war gave women opportunity, but not always respect. Many faced sexism on the job. They were paid less, trained less, and often told, "You're just here until the men come home." But in the shadows of steel mills and shipyards, something began to change. Women began to ask, "Why not us? Why can't we do this work permanently? Why not equal pay?" Unions slowly started to open to women. Female workers organized to protect their jobs and push for rights. Wartime necessity had opened the door, but these women had no intention of closing it again. Not all women faced the war's challenges equally. Women of color were often excluded from the best jobs. They were the last hired, the first fired. Housing and childcare were segregated, even during a national emergency. Yet still, they came. Black women like those at the Willow Run bomber plant, Latina women who joined the Bracero program, Asian American women who worked even while their families sat in internment camps. They fought two wars, one abroad, one at home, against injustice, poverty, and discrimination. When the war ended in 1945, so too did many women's jobs. They were expected to return home quietly, gratefully. But something had changed. They had tasted independence. They had mastered machines, built bombs, and tilled acres. Many didn't want to go back to aprons in silence. Their experiences planted seeds, seeds that would later bloom into the women's rights movements of the 1960s and beyond. The war was fought on battlefields, yes, but it was also fought on assembly lines and farm rows, in union halls and kitchen tables. These women may not have worn medals, but they earned them in spirit. They are more than symbols. They are legacies. And they remind us that in every fight, for country, for freedom, for justice, victory isn't won by strength alone. It's won by those who show up, roll up their sleeves, and do the work no one sees.